Welcome to Whispered Clues. Tonight we enter the world of Sherlock Holmes in The Dancer, seen without a reflection, where a vanished image hides a deadly truth, and every mirrored step conceals deceit. Where in the world are you joining us from? Now pour yourself something warm and let the mystery begin. The first sound that broke the stillness of Baker Street that morning was the faint, rhythmic clicking of a metronome. Holmes had set it upon the mantelpiece beside his violin, its pendulum swinging with mechanical grace. I was halfway through trimming the edges of the Times when the bell downstairs rang once, sharply, then again, as though the visitor's nerve faltered and returned. The metronome continued a soft tick-tock under the pause that followed. Mrs. Hudson, murmuring Holmes without raising his eyes from the chemical retort he was attending, will announce a woman who practices deception but has not the strength to maintain it. "Have you heard her voice?" I asked. "I heard her hesitation," he replied. "That is enough." Moments later, the door opened and a lady of striking carriage entered, tall, veiled and visibly distressed, her gloved hand clasping a folded envelope. The faint scent of violets accompanied her as she inclined her head. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she said, her tone measured but trembling. "My name is Miss Viola Hartley. I come to you because the police have called my story fanciful." Holmes gestured to the chair opposite him. "Pray be seated, Miss Hartley. I find the fanciful more productive than the mundane." What have they refused to believe? She drew a shallow breath. That a man can cast no reflection. The metronome ticked once then and seemed, for an instant, to fall out of rhythm. "Indeed," Holmes murmured, leaning forward. "You speak of a living man?" "I do, sir. His name is Marcel Durant. He is or was the lead dancer of the Nouveau Ballet at the Lyceum. Last night, during rehearsal, I saw him standing before the long studio mirror. Every dancer reflected but him, and yet he moved, laughed, and took my hand. Her voice caught, and she pressed the envelope upon Holmes. He turned it over thoughtfully. Its flap bore a faint smear of silver dust. "Watson," he said, "would you describe that residue?" I examined it. "Some form of metallic powder, perhaps from stage paint?" Holmes's eyes glinted. "Stage paint, or something applied for an altogether different purpose?" "Miss Hartley, did anyone else remark upon this absence of reflection?" No one dared speak, but I saw, I am certain of it. And later, when he left the theatre, a man followed him, a tall figure in a dark coat. This morning, Marcel vanished. Holmes's fingers drummed against the armrest in perfect counterpoint to the metronome. When truth hides behind illusion, Miss Hartley, mirrors are the first accomplices. Watson, the silvering of a mirror, you recall, is achieved with nitrate of silver upon glass. Of course. Then if a reflection is removed, either the light is obstructed or the mirror lies. She looked bewildered. "You mean the mirror itself?" Holmes rose, crossing swiftly to the window. The fog beyond caught the light, dull and unmoving. "Miss Hartley, were the mirrors newly installed?" "Yes, only last week. They came from the same firm that designs theatrical illusions for the Empire Theatre." Holmes's expression sharpened. "Ah, we are among professionals in deceit." "You say your friend vanished. At what hour?" "Just past 11. "And he carried what?" "Only a black leather valise, his dance shoes and some papers, I think." Holmes turned to me, a valise and a reflection both missing. Curious symmetry, is it not? Miss Hartley's composure wavered. "I feared madness, Mr. Holmes, but then this arrived." She indicated the envelope. Holmes slit it open with his penknife. Inside was a small photograph of a group of dancers on stage, their forms caught mid-movement before a wall of mirrors. Every face reflected faithfully save one. Marcel Durant stood at the centre, smiling at the camera, and behind him the glass was empty. Holmes studied it in silence, then tapped the edge of the photograph against the ticking metronome. Observe, Watson, the shadows. The gaslight angle demands that a reflection must fall precisely behind him. Yet there is none. This is not absence, it is removal. Removal? I echoed. Chemical or mechanical tampering. The image itself, or the mirror either, could have been altered to sustain illusion. Miss Hartley, did Durant express fear or secrecy of late? She hesitated. He spoke of being watched, of someone who had once owned him. I thought it was theatrical nonsense. Holmes's gaze softened for a heartbeat. There is nothing theatrical about fear, madam. Did he give a name? A Count Valliere. I thought him a patron. Marcel would never say more. Holmes drew a long breath, eyes half closed. Watson, make a note of that name, and send a telegram to Inspector Lestrade requesting discreet inquiry at the Lyceum. I suspect we are dealing not merely with vanishing glass, but with a design far darker than illusion. He lifted the metronome, stilled its pendulum with one finger, and the silence that followed was almost tangible. Miss Hartley, you must remain in London until I send word. Under no circumstances visit the theatre alone. She rose, gathering her veil. Then you believe me? My dear lady, Holmes said, his tone almost kind, belief is immaterial. The evidence believes you. As she departed, the sound of her footsteps faded down the stairs. Holmes resumed his chair, holding the photograph toward the firelight. Watson, he said softly, what does one call a dancer who moves with perfect grace yet leaves no image behind? I considered it a phantom, or, he murmured, a man who wishes to erase his past. He tapped the photograph once more. The paper gave a crisp, dry sound, and to erase one's reflection is only the beginning. The metronome, though still, gave a faint creak as its weight settled like a heartbeat returning after a pause. Holmes's eyes flicked to it, and I knew, with that familiar chill of anticipation, that our morning calm had ended. Holmes's gaze remained fixed upon the silent metronome, its pendulum at rest like a verdict unspoken. Watson, he said at last, it is a rare moment when stillness tells more than motion. That woman's truth lies not in what she saw, but in what she was made to see. He slipped the photograph into his dressing-gown pocket and reached for his hat. The Lyceum is our first theatre this morning. You will accompany me. As always, I replied, rising. He nodded once, then abruptly halted. One detail first. He lifted the envelope again, holding it toward the window. The light caught on the silver smear I had observed earlier, revealing the faintest impression of an embossed pattern of two interlocking letters, V and A, within a circle. Valliere, Holmes murmured. Our Count brands even his correspondence. Vanity is the easiest crime to detect. We descended the stairs, Holmes moving at a swift clip, the tails of his dressing-gown flaring like wings, before he changed into his overcoat. The morning fog met us outside, damp and colourless, muffling the distant traffic. Somewhere a lamplighter's pole clinked against iron. That faint metallic sound, steady, hollow, rhythmic, mirrored the metronome's earlier beat and seemed to follow us down Baker Street. At the cab rank, Holmes hailed a driver, his tone brisk. The Lyceum Theatre, Wellington Street. Then to me, sotto voce, listen carefully, Watson. Each deception begins with a sound tone that repeats until belief adjusts itself to silence. Our dancer's missing reflection is that silence. I smiled faintly. You speak of music, Holmes, as though truth were conducted. Precisely. The instruments differ, but the score remains constant. The cab rattled eastward through the mist, wheels hissing on wet stone. Holmes sat motionless, fingertips pressed together. Twice he murmured a phrase beneath his breath mirrors that lie and twice fell into stillness again. At last he spoke. "Do you recall the case of the vanished glassblower in '87 vaguely? You concluded that the mirrors were painted, not forged." "Just so. A chemical mist of mercury and tin applied over a thin film of gelatin. But in this instance, we have not a craftsman's deceit. It is a theatrical illusion, likely executed with purpose. Durant was no magician. Someone rehearsed that disappearance before him." He turned his head sharply. "You heard that?" "What?" "The echo." He tapped the side of the cab. A metallic beat twice, then pause. "The sound has followed us since Baker Street." I leaned out through the small rear window. Through the haze, I glimpsed another hansom trailing at a measured distance. "A dark cab behind us," I said. Holmes nodded. "Our observer is diligent, likely Valier's agent. We shall allow the performance to continue until the interval." When we arrived at the Lyceum, Holmes dismissed our driver and stepped aside as the trailing cab rolled past, its passenger hidden, only a gloved hand visible against the curtain. The cab did not stop. Inside the theatre, the vast rehearsal hall echoed with muted footfalls and the soft scrape of ballet shoes. Rows of mirrors lined the walls, their surfaces catching every shimmer of gaslight. A stagehand looked up from polishing the floor. "Mr. Holmes," he ventured. "Inspector Lestrade said you might be coming." "Excellent. You will oblige me by dimming half the lamps," Holmes said. "Reflections tell better stories in half-light." The man complied. Holmes approached one of the mirrors, studying its edge. His hand traced the joint between the glass and the gilt frame. "Watson, observe this bevel. It is not flush. There is a second pane behind the first." I stepped closer. Indeed, the faint line of separation caught the light like a hairline fracture. "Two mirrors, one before another," he continued. "The foremost is slightly tinted, designed to conceal depth when illuminated from the front. The rear, however, may open into another chamber, a classic illusionist's trick." He struck the frame lightly, and it yielded a hollow note. "There. A door disguised as reflection. Our dancer may not have vanished at all. He may have been drawn through his own image." At that instant, a faint rustle echoed from behind the stage. Holmes turned, every motion exact. "Come out," he said evenly. A young man emerged, a pale figure in stage black, holding a rag and a tin of silver polish. "I was only cleaning, sir." Holmes regarded him with a half-smile. "Your cloth carries nitrate solution, not polish. It tarnishes rather than brightens. You were erasing silver, not adding it." The man faltered. "They told me to clean just the center panels." "Who told you?" He hesitated. "A gentleman in a velvet coat. French, I think. He said he'd pay well for secrecy." "Valier," Holmes said softly. "And where is he now?" The boy's eyes darted toward the far end of the mirrors. "He had a key to the rear passage, said he'd fetched something last night. When I came this morning, the lock was broken." Holmes moved swiftly, pressing the edge of the mirror with his palm. The panels swung inward soundlessly, revealing a narrow corridor. Dust motes spiraled in the dim light, and from within came the faint echo of dripping water, slow, deliberate, measured like the metronome's pulse. Holmes's eyes gleamed. "The rhythm persists. Watson, our phantom stage awaits." He stepped through. First I followed, my boots crunching on scattered shards of glass. Beyond the partition lay a narrow dressing room, abandoned, but the scent of violets lingered faintly. Upon the vanity stood a shattered mirror, its silver backing partly stripped, revealing raw glass. Beside it lay a black valise. Holmes bent, opening it. Inside, folded with precise care, were a pair of dance slippers, a half-mask of white silk, and a small vial of mercury solution. "Durant's effects," I said. "Yes, and something more." He lifted a thin parchment from beneath the slippers. It bore the same circular crest V.A. and a single line written in fine script: "To erase the reflection is to own the soul." Holmes's expression darkened. A phrase of Valier's, I presume? Watson, we stand not in pursuit of theft, but of possession. Mirrors, it seems, are only the tools. From somewhere deep within the corridor came a faint metallic tapping once, twice. Pause again. Holmes extinguished his lantern. He is still here. Holmes motioned for silence, his hand raised like a conductor halting an orchestra mid-note. The metallic tapping came again, 2 sharp strikes, a pause, then one soft chime that seemed to travel through the wall itself. "It is Morse," he whispered. "Not random." A V, the Count's initials. We stood perfectly still. From behind the thin partition of the dressing room, a dim line of light quivered along the floorboards. Holmes stooped, touched the glass edge of the false mirror, and with a careful motion prized it wider. A narrow space lay beyond part storeroom, part tunnel, lit by a single lamp suspended from a hook. Against the far wall, a tall gilt mirror leaned forward slightly, its surface dull with age. But within it shimmered a second image, Holmes and myself, faintly doubled. And there, in the gap between our reflections, stood another figure. He was motionless, a man in a black coat and velvet collar, his hair brushed straight back from a gaunt forehead. In his gloved hand gleamed a silver walking stick. The air around him quivered faintly as though heat rose from invisible fire. "Count Valier, I presume?" Holmes said evenly. The man inclined his head. "Monsieur Holmes, I had expected your arrival. You have a punctuality most un-English." Holmes stepped forward, his tone clipped but courteous. "And you, sir, have an art most unsavoury. A dancer who disappears, mirrors that deceive, and an inscription that speaks of owning souls hardly stagecraft." Valier's smile deepened, though his reflection did not follow. The mirror behind him showed only the Rumno man, no cane, no movement. "You seek Mr. Durant," he said. "He has merely gone where his vanity led him to the side he preferred." Holmes's eyes flicked to the mirror. "To the side? Every artist," Valier murmured, "dreams of an image purer than life. Some of us learn to cross the boundary." He gestured toward the glass, and the lamplight trembled. "The mirror is only the door." "Superstition?" I muttered. Holmes silenced me with a glance. "Watson, there is reason beneath every riddle. Let us locate it." He strode to the mirror, tapped its surface once with the back of his hand. It rang faintly, hollow-like struck crystal. Ah, a double plate again, silvered at variable density. Behind it, a chamber, perhaps a foot deep. Valier's voice floated softly. "You will not find him there." "Indeed?" Holmes's tone sharpened. "Then perhaps you will tell us why his valise lies empty and his mirror broken." The Count's gaze turned distant. Marcel Durant feared his own reflection. "He told me so. Every night," he said, "it moves differently from me. I offered him freedom. He accepted." Holmes regarded him coldly. "Freedom in exchange for what?" "For the surrender of image. Once a man no longer mirrors himself, he ceases to doubt. He becomes whole." Holmes's expression barely shifted, but I saw the muscle tighten at his jaw. "You speak like an illusionist of the mind, Count, not of art." "I speak," Valier said, "of perfection. Look." He lifted his cane and pressed its tip to the glass. Instantly, the reflection of the lamp extinguished within the mirror, though the real light still burned above us. In that dark surface, Durant appeared, his form pale, eyes wide, one hand raised as if to push outward. Miss Hartley's description had been precisely the same elegant posture, the same tragic astonishment. Holmes took a step nearer. "Watson, note the distortion of light around the image, haloed, not natural. The mirror's rear must be coated with mercury under vacuum. The image is projected from a hidden lantern." "Very clever," Valier said, "yet not clever enough." Touch the glass, doctor. I shall not. Then allow him to. Durant's phantom lifted his hand again. For an instant I thought the fingertips pressed outward from behind the glass. The pane bowed faintly, as if soft as water. Holmes turned to the Count. "Where is he?" "Everywhere," Valliere whispered, "and nowhere that you may reach. Then I shall content myself with arresting you." But the Count only smiled. The police cannot seize what does not cast a shadow. He reached backward into the mirror and vanished. Holmes sprang forward, seizing the frame. The glass shuddered violently, then cleared, leaving only our two reflections staring back. The lamp flickered once and steadied. We searched the wall behind, empty. No door, no passage, no human presence. Holmes stood silent for a long moment, then said quietly, "The trick is ingenious but not supernatural. There must be an aperture leading to the rear of the mirror." He escaped through it as he spoke. He crouched, examining the floorboards. Here fresh scuff marks. Heavy boots dragged across waxed wood. He entered by the corridor we came from, doubled back, and fled during the projection. I exhaled sharply. Then Durant? Holmes straightened. Durant was alive when that image was made, a photographic illusion using a silver-coated film between glass plates. See this wire? It connects to a small lantern behind the wall. He traced the thin cord to the corner, where a tin battery lay hidden beneath cloth, a dissolving view device, optical phantasmagoria. Valliere is not the first to sell ghosts, but why target Durant? Holmes's expression grew grim, because he was a willing subject. To vanish, one must first desire erasure. The Count merely supplied method to motive. The rhythmic tapping began again, now distant, 2 sharp notes, 1 faint. Holmes turned toward the corridor. "He is retreating," he said. "Watson, extinguish the lamp. We shall follow the sound." Darkness swallowed the room. Only the faint silver sheen of the mirror remained, reflecting nothing. The tapping receded, replaced by the steady drip of water somewhere below. Holmes whispered, "Our quarry flees not through streets, but reflections. Keep close." We moved into the narrow corridor, guided by the glimmer of his pocket lantern. The air grew colder, and from behind us, the old mirror gave a single, low creak, like a sigh of something half alive, yearning still to speak. The mirror's sigh still trembled through the air as we pressed on, our steps muffled by the narrow wood planks beneath. Holmes's pocket lantern cast a tight beam that swung from wall to wall, striking the plaster where long strips of mercury film hung like dead vines. The sound motif persisted, slow drips of water, then a metallic tick echoing from unseen pipes, repeating the same rhythm as before. 2 sharp, 1 faint. Holmes paused, crouched, and touched the damp boards. "Condensation," he murmured. This corridor was once part of the old cellars below the stage. The Count uses forgotten architecture as his accomplice. Then he's escaped underground? He nodded. Likely. Yet consider why remain within a maze he could easily quit? Because he guards something he cannot move. We continued downward along the sloping passage until the lantern struck a door of black-painted iron. Its surface bore that same intertwined monogram, V and A. Holmes ran his thumb along the hinge and smiled faintly. Unbarred. Confidence is his weakest disguise. He opened it soundlessly. A stale draught exhaled from the darkness beyond. Inside lay a vaulted chamber strewn with props, painted columns, broken scenery, gilt chairs, and in the center another mirror, taller than any before, veiled by a curtain of black gauze. Beneath it stood a narrow table covered with bottles, powders, and glass slides. Holmes advanced, lantern steady. "Behold, Watson, the laboratory of illusion." He lifted a slide and held it toward the light. A negative image shimmered across the pale face of Marcel Durant, eyes closed as if asleep. Photographic plates, Holmes said, prepared with silver nitrate and collodion. This is not art, it is an experiment. He has recreated Durant in chemical reflection. I stared at the veiled mirror. Then perhaps Durant is still alive? That depends, Holmes replied quietly, on whether the image required the model's life to form it. He reached for the gauze curtain and drew it aside. The mirror beneath glowed faintly of its own accord, its surface, neither glass nor metal, but something fluid that caught and bent the light. And there, upon it, floated a second Durant, motionless, his features perfect but unnaturally still, as though painted upon water. Holmes's voice dropped to a murmur. Observing the slight ripple at the edge, this is a solution, Watson, suspended mercury amalgam. The Count has created a reflective bath capable of holding an image before fixing it upon the photographic plate. Durant's likeness was transferred directly, possibly while he was hypnotized or drugged. But why such complexity? To possess what cannot fade, Holmes said grimly. Valliere trades in permanence of beauty and obsession, dressed as philosophy. From the far side of the chamber came a faint scraping. Holmes extinguished the lantern at once, plunging us into darkness. The scraping grew nearer, followed by that same measured ticking sound, the Count's cane upon stone. Holmes's whisper brushed my ear. Stay silent. The illusionist returns to tend his art. Through the dim phosphorescence of the mirror, Valliere's outline appeared at the doorway, a silhouette against weaker shadows. He moved to the table, striking a match to light a small lamp. The glass walls caught the reflection. He had no shadow here either, only a faint shimmer where light should have met him. Beautiful, he murmured to himself. He will never age now. The perfect line of the body is preserved, the grace without decay. Holmes stepped forward from the gloom. And the man himself, preserved as well or destroyed to sustain your masterpiece? Valliere froze, then turned, lips curving faintly. Ah, the critic returns. You admire my work too little, Mr. Holmes. I admire neither vanity nor murder, Holmes said. Release Durant. Release? The Count gestured toward the mirror. He is within it, safe from the corruption of time. Holmes's tone hardened. You have used electroplating and electrical charge through mercury solution to fix an image. It could kill a man instantly if he stood within the field. Valliere's smile deepened. And yet, how still he looks. The world cannot harm him now. Holmes lunged. The two men struggled briefly as the lamp crashed to the floor, spilling oil that hissed as it met damp wood. The chamber filled with flickering light. I rushed forward, but Holmes already had the upper hand, twisting the Count's wrist until the silver cane clattered away. Watson, cut the battery wire, Holmes cried. I seized the cord that ran behind the mirror and tore it free. Instantly, the glow within the mercury surface faded. The image of Durant wavered, dissolved, then bled into nothingness like smoke vanishing in air. Valliere gave a hoarse cry. You fool! You've undone perfection! Holmes thrust him backward. Perfection that requires death is rot, Count. You mistake preservation for power. The Count's composure collapsed. He wanted it. He begged to remain beautiful forever. Then he was your accomplice until remorse found him, Holmes said. You silenced it with mercury. The mirror behind them cracked from edge to edge with a single, resonant sound. The Count wrenched free, staring at the fracture as if it were a wound. He was mine, he whispered, my reflection. Holmes seized his arm, and now you have none. At that instant, water began seeping from beneath the walls, running across the floorboards. The chemical jars toppled, mingling silver solution and oil. Holmes pulled me toward the door. The reaction will ignite the mercury vapor out, Watson. We fled through the passage as a muffled concussion rolled behind us. The corridor flared white, then dimmed to a low, rhythmic hiss, the crackle of fire and breaking glass, syncopated like the ticking that had followed us all morning. At the stairway's mouth, Holmes halted, breath quick. "We must return at once when it cools. If Durant still lives, the body will be there. If not, the residue will tell its own tale." He glanced back. Through the smoke, the Count's voice echoed faintly once more, 2 words I could barely discern. Then silence, broken only by the slow dripping that resumed, steady and precise. Holmes turned to me, eyes dark. "When a man destroys his reflection, Watson, he invites his ruin to step into its place." Smoke rolled along the passage like a living thing, coiling about our boots as we climbed from the cellar into the service hall above. The sound that pursued us, slow drips, faint, ticking metal, echoed through the timbers like the heartbeat of the theatre itself, refusing to die. Holmes forced open the iron door, and a wash of cold fog met us from the alley. He turned, coughing once, eyes alight with that peculiar fire I had seen in him after danger, never before it. "Watson, observe the rhythm of that dripping," he said hoarsely. "Still 3 beats, the Count's signature persists, even in destruction. He survives. Do you think he is alive?" He nodded once, brushing soot from his sleeve. "A man who worships the mirror would not perish within it. He will find another glass to hide behind." We emerged onto Wellington Street. The dawn light was struggling through mist as the fire brigade was already clattering up from the Strand. Holmes gave a brief account to a constable, then turned away before questions multiplied. "Back to Baker Street," he said. "The Count has lost his workshop, not his illusion. The mirror's fracture has broken the spell, but not the purpose. There is still unfinished design." In the cab, he sat rigid, fingers tapping upon his knee. 3 beats, then pause. I realized with unease that he had unconsciously adopted the same rhythm. "Holmes," I ventured, "you said he guards something he cannot move. If the mirror is destroyed, what remains?" He leaned forward. "A process, Watson. He has perfected a method of transferring human image onto silver nitrate through living conduction. Durant may have been the first subject, but not the last." The wheels jolted over a cobblestone. "You believe there are others?" Holmes's gaze flicked toward the window. "Let us see what the post brings before we conclude." When we reached Baker Street, Mrs. Hudson met us at the door, her expression troubled. "2 telegrams arrived, Mr. Holmes, one from Inspector Lestrade, the other delivered by hand from the Lyceum." Holmes took them both. The first he opened with a swift glance. "Lestrade reports that a body has been found in the Thames near Waterloo Bridge. Male, height 5'11", wearing the remnants of stage costume." "Durant?" I asked. "Possibly." Holmes set the paper aside and turned to the second message. It was written in a neat, continental hand. "The reflection dies only when the watcher turns away." "VA?" Holmes's lips thinned. "He taunts us." "And that postmark Fleet Street. He remains in London." The metronome on the mantel, long silent, gave a faint creak as though stirred by his words. "He crossed to it, wound it once, and set it ticking. Keep your ear upon that rhythm, Watson. It may guide us." For several minutes he paced before the fire, then stopped abruptly. The river, the reflection, he has repeated the motif. Valliere's art is recursive. Every scene mirrors the last. If Durant's body is truly in the Thames, we must inspect it before it vanishes beneath official paperwork. We took a cab to the Riverside station, where Lestrade awaited us with his usual blend of irritation and relief. The body lay beneath a tarpaulin on a stretcher, its face turned aside from the light. "Well, Mr. Holmes," Lestrade said, "another of your cases that smells of lunacy. They say the fellow had silver on his hands." Holmes lifted the sheet. The dead man's features were unmistakable. Durant, pale and peaceful, yet the skin around his temples bore faint metallic sheen, as if silver dust had fused to it. "Electrochemical burns," Holmes murmured. He was within the circuit when the mirror failed. Lestrade frowned. You mean it killed him? Indirectly, Holmes said. He was drained, not scorched. The current passed through reflective medium rather than flesh. Valliere drew off the charge at the last instant. I examined the corpse more closely. The eyes, though half open, seemed oddly hollow. And the reflection? I asked quietly. Would the glass still hold it? Holmes regarded the river. Perhaps it has found new water to dwell in. Look there. Floating near the bank was a broken fragment of mirror, silver backing peeled away. As it rocked, it caught the grey light, and for one fleeting instant I thought I saw a face upon its surface, blurred yet recognizable. Then the current carried it under. Holmes's voice was low. Durant's reflection survives the man, a phenomenon Valliere predicted. He believes image to be the truer existence, flesh, the temporary frame. Lestrade looked between us impatiently. And how does one arrest a reflection, Mr. Holmes? By anticipating its next host, Holmes replied. Count Valliere requires a subject, a new performer, perhaps one near the late Durant's circle. He turned sharply. Miss Viola Hartley. She's still at her lodgings near Covent Garden, I said. Then we go immediately. We reached her rooms within the hour. Miss Hartley met us pale and trembling, clutching a handkerchief. Mr. Holmes, I was just about to come to you. Oh, forgive me, someone has been in my dressing room at the theatre. My mirror was broken, and on the frame someone had written, "You are chosen." Holmes's eyes flashed. When did you discover this? An hour ago, and this was pinned beneath the glass. She handed him a card embossed with that same circular seal. Beneath it, in the looping script, to dance with your reflection is to live twice. Holmes examined it. The Count continues his experiments through fear. Miss Hartley, you must not return to the Lyceum. Valliere intends to replace Durant's image with yours. She swayed slightly. Replace mine? Precisely. He will seek to trap your likeness as he did his victims. The metronome's beat echoed faintly in my memory, and as if summoned, the clock on her mantel ticked thrice too sharp, one soft. Holmes heard it too. He crossed the room in a single stride and looked out the window. Across the street, reflected in the opposite shop's glass, stood a figure in a velvet coat. His face was pale, eyes fixed directly upon our window. Yet when Holmes threw open the sash, the pavement below was empty. He turned back, his voice quiet but urgent. He watches from mirrors now, Watson. His stage has expanded to every pane of glass in London. Holmes did not move from the window for several seconds, his eyes tracking the shifting play of light across the opposite shop front. The glass reflected nothing now but the trembling gas lamp and our own blurred shapes. Then he said softly, "He has found a new medium. Watson no longer bound to the theatre's mirrors, but to any surface that returns a gaze. London itself has become his stage." Miss Hartley pressed a hand to her throat. "You mean he can see through windows?" "More precisely," Holmes replied. "He can project through them. Reflection is his chosen weapon. Wherever he fixes the light, his presence follows. You are safe here only if the curtains remain drawn." I crossed the room and closed them firmly. Then what is he after? Surely not merely to terrify her. Holmes's voice sharpened. "Terror is but the rehearsal, my dear Watson. The performance is controlled." He turned back to Miss Hartley. "Did Durant ever speak of being compelled? His movements, gestures, dance steps guided by unseen rhythm?" She nodded hesitantly. "Yes." He said sometimes the mirror led him, that his own reflection anticipated the motion before he made it. I thought it was nerves or exhaustion. Holmes glanced toward the mantel clock, whose ticking matched that familiar pattern, 2 sharp, 1 faint. The rhythm again. Valliere uses repetition to impose an auditory suggestion synchronized with reflection. Once the subject mirrors his cadence, he is lost. "You mean hypnotism?" I asked. "In essence," Holmes said, "but through sight and sound together, the Count has woven music, light, and chemistry into one instrument of subjugation." Miss Hartley's eyes widened. "Then I am all ready?" Holmes interrupted gently. "No, madam. You are aware, and awareness is resistance, but he will not cease. Watson, the only way to capture a reflection is to trap the light that carries it. We must anticipate where he will next project himself." I frowned. "And how, in all London, do we begin?" Holmes paced once, then stopped before her dressing mirror, the one cracked across its surface. He repeats motifs: the dancer, the mirror, the silver. If his art is to replace Durant with Miss Hartley, he must reproduce the same scene. The Lyceum's ruin deprives him of a stage, but another theatre remains, the Adelphi across the Strand. They rehearse nightly, their mirrors intact. I believe he will appear there. Miss Hartley shivered. "But how will you know?" Holmes smiled faintly. "By invitation. He wishes to be seen, else he would not have written." "I shall go tonight as his audience." "And me?" I asked. "You, Watson, will watch the reflection, not the man. He will attempt to draw my attention toward his image, therefore you must note what happens behind it." He turned to Miss Hartley, his tone firm. "Remain here. Lock your door and cover every mirror. Should you hear the rhythm, 2, 1, pause against it. Disrupt his measure." "I will," she whispered. Holmes took up his hat and cane. Then came Watson. The city awaits its next illusion. We left her flat and stepped into the misted street. The fog thickened toward the river, lamplight breaking through in thin yellow discs. Each window we passed seemed to hold the ghost of movement, a trick of moisture or perhaps more. The faint metallic rhythm seemed to pulse beneath the noise of carriages, as though every horseshoe struck the same hidden beat. Holmes walked quickly, coat drawn tight. "The city reflects itself endlessly," he muttered. He could hide in 1,000 panes and yet remain unseen. But repetition betrays even the cleverest pattern. We reached the Adelphi just as the orchestra's last notes faded from rehearsal. A stagehand, familiar with Holmes's reputation, allowed us entry through the side door. Inside, the stage was deserted, save for the great rehearsal mirrors glinting under dim gaslight. Holmes lifted his cane and tapped the floor once. "Do you hear it, Watson?" "Only the ticking of the lamps. Listen deeper." Indeed, beneath the faint hiss of gas, another rhythm echoed, a metallic tapping from within the mirrors themselves, as though some hollow space behind them answered the world's pulse. Holmes approached the nearest pane. "He is here. The question is how." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small silver coin, holding it against the glass. "A conductor. If he employs light through mercury vapor, we shall provoke a reaction." He struck the mirror sharply with his knuckle. The reflection rippled, distorting both our faces. From within, a voice spoke, quiet, cultured, unmistakably Valier's. "Bravo, monsieur! You have found my second stage." Holmes's tone was cold. "You mistake persistence for art, Count. Durant's death was not creation, but cowardice." The reflection's lips curved. "Yet you return to see me. Do you not crave reflection too, Holmes, to be watched, admired, understood?" Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Your illusions feed on vanity. You enslave those who already fear themselves." The mirrored face darkened. "And you, who study all men as puzzles, what reflection enslaves you, detective?" "None," Holmes said flatly, "for I know myself." The Count's laughter rippled like water struck by stone. "Then allow me to show you the opposite." Light flared. The entire wall of mirrors blazed with overlapping images: Holmes, myself, Miss Hartley, even Lestrade faces drawn from memory and arranged like an audience. They blinked, moved and breathed. My own reflection raised its hand before I did. Holmes's voice cut through the cacophony. He's projecting stored images and optical recordings on prepared silver plates. Watson, the switch! I turned and found a small electrical box fixed to the wall, humming faintly. I struck it open with my cane, severing the wire. The light within the mirrors fractured, collapsing into shards of dull silver. Valliere's voice echoed once more. "You cannot break what is already multiplied." Then it faded into static. Holmes exhaled slowly. "A test, not an assault." He measures our response. "You think he will strike again?" "Undoubtedly, and not with illusions this time." As he spoke, one mirror at the far end of the stage, unbroken by the surge, caught a lingering movement, a single hand pressed from within, palm outward, leaving a dark print upon the glass. Then it vanished, leaving behind the faint sound of dripping water, steady, deliberate, two sharp, one soft. Holmes stared at it in silence. He leaves us his rhythm as a signature. The next act begins. Holmes's gaze held upon that fading print upon the mirror until the last tremor of moisture slid down the glass. "He taunts us, Watson," he said, his voice low, even. "The rhythm is not random, it is a signal. 2, 1, pause. We are being measured like subjects in his experiment." I drew closer. "Measured how?" He tapped the pane with his forefinger. "By reaction time. Every illusionist studies response. Valliere is no longer performing for the stage, he's conducting an audience of 2. Then he's here?" "Closer than breath," Holmes said. "He watches from the opposite side of this glass, or through any reflection that connects to it. He's learned to exploit light itself as a corridor." At that moment, a low whine came from behind the mirror, followed by a soft metallic click. The pane darkened. Holmes stepped back immediately. "He's adjusting illumination," he said sharply. "We're about to see what he wishes us to." The mirror brightened again, not with our faces, but a scene of Miss Hartley's flat, as though viewed through invisible eyes. She sat upon her sofa, head bent over a letter. Behind her, the curtains drawn when we had left now hung slightly apart. Between them shimmered a faint outline of the silhouette of the Count himself. Miss Hartley was unaware. Holmes's voice cut through the air. "Watson, he's reversed the projection. The mirrors form a sequential path Adelphi to Covent Garden. We are the observers now, not him. Can she be warned? No time." He spun toward the side door. "Come, we must intercept him before the rhythm reaches its final beat." We dashed through the theatre, our steps echoing down the hollow corridors, the steady pulse of that dripping rhythm following us like pursuit. Outside, the fog clung heavier than before, turning every lamp into a ghostly coin. Holmes hailed a cab, thrusting a shilling toward the driver. "Covent Garden, and double fare if you make it in 7 minutes." The cab lurched forward. Holmes kept one hand upon the doorframe, eyes fixed on the blurred city lights. "He will attempt a full transference tonight. Durant's death was the prototype." Miss Hartley's reflection must be stabilized at the moment she perceives it. Fear acts as catalyst. I gripped the seat. Then she must not see him. Precisely. If we arrive before she looks toward that mirror, the sequence will fail. The horses thundered across the bridge, hooves striking the cobbles with the same threefold cadence, 2 sharp, 1 soft. The rhythm had become omnipresent, as though the very city beat in Valliere's measure. Holmes's lips moved soundlessly, calculating. He uses frequency from the gas main slow current through reflective metals synchronized across distance. A genius misapplied. We turned onto Russell's Street. Holmes leapt from the cab before it stopped, racing up the narrow stair to Miss Hartley's rooms. I followed close behind. Her door was unlocked. The parlour beyond was lit by one lamp only. Miss Hartley stood before her mirror, transfixed. In the glass behind her, Valier's form had materialized fully tall, gleaming, almost translucent. His hand extended toward her shoulder, though no physical contact bridged the space. "Miss Hartley!" Holmes's voice shattered the silence. She gasped, the spell broken. At that instant the reflection twisted violently, the Count's image lunging outward as though pulled by invisible cords. The mirror's surface swelled like water under pressure. Holmes seized a chair and hurled it through the glass. The mirror exploded in a shower of silver shards, scattering light across the room like splintered lightning. The reflected figure dissolved with a faint hiss, leaving only the echo of dripping water that resumed somewhere deep in the walls. Miss Hartley collapsed into a chair, trembling. I saw his eyes in mine. He was inside me. Holmes knelt beside her. "You are safe. He required your reflection intact to complete the transfer. The fracture ended it." Her breathing steadied. "Then he's gone?" Holmes straightened, scanning the fragments that littered the floor. "Gone from here, perhaps. But every mirror in London remains his potential refuge. The network of illusion persists." I crouched and picked up a shard no larger than my hand. Within it shimmered something fainter, flicker like breath-fogging glass. Then, clear as daylight, Valier's whisper rose from the broken piece. "You cannot break the rhythm, Holmes. It is already within you." I dropped it with a shudder. The fragment hit the hearthstone and split cleanly in two. Holmes's gaze sharpened. He has adapted. The reflection need not survive whole. Each piece now bears a fragmentary image, a contagion of sight. Can it spread? He considered. Only if observed. The eye completes the circuit. Then what must we do? "Destroy the witnesses," he said grimly, then caught himself. "I mean, destroy the reflecting surfaces. Watson, draw the curtains. Miss Hartley, look at nothing shiny, nothing bright. Even a teacup may serve him now." She obeyed, pulling the heavy drapes closed. The ticking of her mantel clock grew louder in the dimness, two sharp, one soft. Holmes turned toward it and smiled without mirth. He's clever. He leaves rhythm where vision fails. If he cannot bind us through sight, he will do so through sound. He opened the clock's glass door and stopped the pendulum with his thumb. Silence fell. For a long moment none of us spoke. Then a faint metallic tapping answered from somewhere beneath the floorboards, patiently, mocking. Holmes rose, face pale. He retreats downward again. The sewers run beneath this street and the gas conduits beside them, both mirrored channels in their own fashion. He uses the wet surfaces to travel light and vibration alike. He's turned London's underbelly into an extension of his mirrors. I stared at him. Then how can we fight a man who lives in reflections? Holmes reached for his cane. By drawing him out of them. Valliere has tied himself to an unbroken circuit of mirrors and light. If one point of that network is made brilliant enough, painfully brilliant, it will draw him to it. Miss Hartley whispered. "You mean to lure him?" "Precisely," Holmes said. "A final dance before the reflection fades for good." He turned toward me, his eyes fierce and alive. "Watson, fetch Lestrade and have the constabulary secure every theatre with mercury glass within a mile of this street. At dawn, we light the trap." From below, the tapping quickened. 2, 1, pause, then ended with a single, hollow knock that reverberated through the floor. Holmes inclined his head, listening. "The Count accepts," he murmured. He always did love an encore. Holmes did not pause after that final reverberating knock. He was already moving toward the door, his stride measured, controlling the rhythm of purpose rather than fear. "Watson," he said, "the city sleeps within a maze of its own reflections. We must now decide where the trap will glimmer brightest." I followed close behind as we descended the stairs and emerged into the mist. The gas lamps flickered along the street, their glow mirrored faintly in puddles that gleamed like scattered glass. Holmes's eyes swept over them with calculation. The Count's medium is any surface capable of returning light. Water and mercury are alike in that regard. We must therefore choose a location abundant in both illumination and illusion. "The theatres, as you said," I replied. "Yes," he murmured. "But which theatre will he deem his masterpiece? A stage is not enough. He seeks a mirror vast enough to swallow an audience entire." We walked quickly toward the Strand. Holmes's mind seemed to race ahead of his feet. He will not risk the Lyceum, nor the Adelphi. Both compromised. But the Savoy possesses mirrored walls across its lobby and an underground boiler corridor lined with condensate steel. If I were a man who lived in reflection, I would make my stand where light multiplies itself endlessly. I watched him hail a cab. "You intend to go tonight?" "At once." Each hour grants him another reflection to hide within. The cab wheels struck rhythm against the stone stew. One, pause. Holmes noticed it too and smiled faintly. He sends his signature ahead of us. Good. He expects pursuit. When we reached the Savoy, the night porter tried to bar our entry, but the flash of Holmes's card and the mention of Lestrade's name sufficed. We passed through the deserted lobby, its gilt mirrors towering in rows, the chandeliers above throwing our doubled images upon the marble. The faint hiss of gas pipes underscored the silence, a whispering pulse that matched the Count's motif. Holmes set his lantern upon the floor and spoke quietly. "Watson, do you recall the experiment with phosphorus-lensed photography at Bart's?" "Yes, where you projected silhouettes upon silver screens." "Exactly. Valliere employs a similar principle, but with mercury, to sustain motion. He channels low current through reflective surfaces, creating an electrical mirage. We shall reverse his circuit." He unrolled a length of wire from his pocket and fixed one end to the gas fitting. "If we flood these mirrors with overexposed light sunlight in miniature, it will tear through the illusion that binds him. A man of reflection cannot endure brilliance." I watched him work swiftly, looping wire around the base of the nearest sconce. "And if he appears before you finish?" Holmes smiled slightly. "Then you will kindly delay him with your revolver. Aim not for him, but for his image. A bullet may shatter the bridge between appearance and host." I did not find this comforting, but I loaded my weapon nonetheless. The first switch sparked. With a hiss, the mirrors caught the glow, amplifying it until the lobby blazed like dawn. Holmes adjusted the dials of his portable battery, the light trembling against every surface. "Now we wait," he said simply. The rhythm returned, first faint, then nearer, tap, tap, pause, tap. The sound came from behind one of the mirrors. Holmes's voice was steady. "He arrives on cue." A moment later, the central pane clouded. From within, Valliere's form emerged, gleaming pale as quicksilver. His eyes shone like lit mercury, his smile one of melancholy triumph. "So this is your theatre now, Monsieur Holmes," he said softly. "All light, no shadow. How dull." Holmes's reply was calm, almost courteous. "The stage is yours, Count. We merely altered the lighting. You cannot burn a reflection," Valliere said. "It adapts to every brilliance. It is you who stand within my mirror." Holmes inclined his head slightly. "Then, by all means, begin your performance." The Count's image stepped forward one pace, then another, until his hand pressed against the inner surface of the glass. The light bent around him, throwing long, distorted versions of Holmes and myself across the opposite wall. I felt the air shift, the gas hissed louder, beating with that same dreadful rhythm. Holmes whispered. Now Watson watches his left hand. When it flickers, it indicates energy transfer. Indeed, the fingers wavered as though caught between two dimensions. Holmes twisted the battery's control, and the light flared white-hot. Valier's expression changed from poise to sudden alarm. "What have you done?" he demanded. "Flooded your conduit," Holmes answered. "You mistake control for creation, Count. The mirror obeys whoever commands the stronger light." The glass vibrated violently. The Count's image began to disintegrate, each outline breaking into silver dust that swirled across the mirror's surface like snow on wind. "You cannot destroy me," Valier's voice echoed. "I exist wherever you look." Holmes's tone sharpened. "Then look here." He seized a second wire, clamped it against the gas fitting, and the entire chamber ignited in a blaze of pure white. The mirrors screamed an audible shriek of splitting glass. I shielded my face as fragments rained down. Through the glare, I glimpsed Valier's figure convulsing, his body liquefying into mercury streaks that dripped to the floor and evaporated with a sound like boiling water. The rhythm faltered, quickened once, and ceased. When the light dimmed at last, only smoke and shattered glass remained. Holmes stood amid the wreckage, his breath steady, eyes fixed upon a single, surviving pane, cracked but intact. Within it, faint and wavering, a face still lingered. Not Valier's, but Holmes's own. He regarded it silently. The reflection smiled back, half a second late. I stepped forward. "Holmes!" He lifted a hand to steel me. "The rhythm continues," he said, quietly. "Listen." From somewhere deep below, faint and metallic, came the pattern again. Two sharp, one soft. Holmes's jaw tightened. "He's not gone, Watson. He's merely changed hosts." Holmes stood motionless before that lingering reflection, his own face delayed by the faintest breath of time, as though thought itself took form a fraction too slowly. The faint metallic rhythm pulsed again from the shattered floor, each drip and echo marking its presence like a heart that refused to cease. "Watson," he said, not looking away. The light burned the Count's image, yet the pattern remains. He has shifted the medium from glass to consciousness. The next mirror he occupies is not of mercury, but of mind. I felt a chill. "You mean that he now lives where reflection begins, within perception itself?" He turned sharply, the motion clean and decisive. "We must test whether he has left residue in mine." "Good heavens, Holmes ho!" By observation, he replied. "If Valier hides in the margins of awareness, he will betray himself when consciousness falters. I shall need you to watch me closely." I nodded uneasily. What am I looking for? Delay, hesitation, the faint echo of motion unmade. When I lift my hand, does the reflection follow or lead? When I speak, do you hear the rhythm before the word? The mirrors around us lay in ruin, each fragment a dim star in the faint gaslight. Holmes drew a piece of chalk from his pocket and marked a line across the surviving pane. "The Count's last footprint lies here. If I stand opposite and my reflection crosses that line a fraction sooner, you will know he lingers." He positioned himself and raised his hand. The reflection copied perfectly immediately. Again he murmured. He blinked, then raised it once more. This time there was a flicker of the faintest shadow preceding movement. "Holmes!" I exclaimed. He did not flinch. Good. Proof enough. Valier still echoes within the nervous interval of vision, yet he cannot dominate unless rhythm synchronizes. He closed his eyes, breathed slowly and measured. "Listen." The dripping resumed. 2, 1, pause. He matched it with his heartbeat, forcing each inhalation into the pattern. He waits for me to align. "Then break it," I urged. Holmes's hand clenched. "I will." He opened his eyes, sharp as glass. Watson Valier built his system upon feedback. The reflection controls the original by the rhythm it teaches him to repeat. If I reverse that flow, introduce discord into cadence, I may drive him out. How? Through music, he said. Simply. I will counterbeat him. He turned to the nearest broken mirror and drew from his pocket the small metronome that had marked the start of this case. Its pendulum hung motionless, blackened by soot. The first sound he heard within these walls was the same sound that betrayed him. We shall let it betray him again. He set it, ticking tick-tock, perfectly steady. The sound collided with the hidden rhythm tap-tap, paused until the two merged in dissonant struggle. Holmes's face tightened, sweat glistened at his temple. He resists as he presses through the beat. The pendulum faltered. Holmes seized it, forcing its motion faster, erratic. If he dwells in the interval, we deny him the interval altogether. The ticking grew wild, then ceased with a sharp crack as the spring snapped. For an instant all sound died, save one faint whisper that seemed to drift from the air itself. "Clever," said Valier's voice, distant yet distinct. "But to kill rhythm is to kill motion, Holmes. Will you still breathe when I am gone?" Holmes's eyes flashed. "I breathe by reason, not reflection." The remaining mirror pulsed with faint light, its fracture lines glowing like veins of silver. Within its surface, Valier's image reappears distorted, shifting between Holmes's features and his own. "You think I'm a ghost," he said, "but you are mine now. Every deduction, every observation mirrors. You live through reflection as I do." Holmes stepped forward. "Then let us test which reflection holds the truth." He raised his hand again, and the image followed, but this time it moved after him, delayed. Holmes smiled grimly. "I have regained the lead." Valier's expression wavered. "You cannot." "Your system was symmetry," Holmes cut in. "Break symmetry, and illusion collapses." He seized the battery wire from the floor and pressed its tip against the mirror's silver edge. Sparks hissed, light surged through the pane, flooding it with brilliance. The reflected face screamed an inhuman sound of glass and breath, and fractured into 100 ghostly visages that dissolved into air. The rhythm shattered into silence. Holmes staggered back, gripping the edge of a chair. I caught his arm. "Are you hurt?" "No, merely emptied." He looked at the mirror's surface, dark, inert, innocent once more. "He is dispersed into light, perhaps into nothing." "Then it's finished?" Holmes straightened slowly. "We shall see. If the rhythm does not return, yes, but illusions have a way of waiting for darkness." He gathered his hat and coat, the calm returning by degrees. "We will visit Miss Hartley one final time. She must know the mirror's curse is ended, and I must confirm it truly is." As we stepped from the Savoy's ruin, dawn crept through the fog, painting the streets in diluted silver. Holmes paused on the threshold, gazing at the faint reflection of his own figure in a puddle. It moved precisely with him, neither leading nor lagging. He exhaled softly. For now, balance is restored. Yet as we turned away, the puddle quivered from some unseen tremor, and in its surface another face-faint, curious, unfinished seemed to peer upward for a single breath before dissolving into ripples. Holmes stopped mid-step, eyes narrowing. "Did you hear that?" From somewhere beneath the paving stones came a sound faint but distinct, 2 sharp taps, one soft. Holmes bent at once, his hand pressed to the pavement. The faint vibration trembled beneath his palm, the 3-beat rhythm unmistakable, 2 sharp, one soft. "He retreats downward again," he murmured. "Valier has followed the only path remaining beneath the city, among the conduits of light and water that mirror the world above. You cannot mean I do. The sewers, Watson, the ultimate hall of reflection's black water, metal pipe, perpetual echo. It suits a man who survives only in the shimmer between surfaces. Within minutes, we had summoned a constable from the Strand and secured a lantern. The iron grate that opened upon the maintenance tunnels yielded with a screech that seemed to carry the Count's mocking signature in its rhythm. Holmes descended first, unflinching, his cane tapping on the rungs in exact counterpoint to the unseen drip below. I followed, and the stench of stagnant water and gas rose around us like a living fog. The tunnels stretched in twin directions, their walls glistening with condensation. The light of the lantern multiplied along the curved metal until it seemed that 100 pale suns burned around us. Holmes's voice echoed. "He can move faster than we can perceive light travels at thought's command here. We must use deduction, not pursuit." "Then what do you deduce?" I asked, my voice hollow in the vast chamber. "That Valier's vanity will not allow him to vanish unseen," Holmes said. "He will stage an ending as carefully as he staged a dance. The question is where his final spotlight shall fall." We moved deeper, guided by sound more than sight. The steady dripping had evolved into a faint metallic resonance, like a piano struck from within the pipes. Holmes quickened his step. There is a modulation of tone. He is near an outlet to the river. Turning a bend, we entered a great circular junction where multiple tunnels met. Water trickled through an iron grate in the floor, reflecting our lantern as a trembling disk of silver. And standing upon the far ledge, motionless as a statue, was Count Valier. He appeared unchanged, elegant, spectral, his coat glistening faintly with moisture. The light caught his face, giving it an unnatural sheen. Holmes raised the lantern high. "You have chosen an appropriate stage, Count London's underbelly, where truth and illusion both flow unseen." Valier inclined his head. "Truth? My dear Holmes, truth is the cruelest illusion of all. Reflection alone endures." "You speak as a man already dead," Holmes said quietly. The Count smiled. "Perhaps. Yet I remain in every mirrored eye that has ever beheld me. Even yours." Holmes took a step forward. "Not quite. I look without worship. Then you look without life." Valier extended a gloved hand toward the grate. "This city is a prism. I have only learned to live along its light." Holmes's tone sharpened. "You mistake escape for evolution. You did not transcend reflection, you infected it. But your own brilliance betrays your light that cannot die and must eventually blind itself." The Count's eyes flashed. "You think to end me with logic?" "With physics," Holmes replied. He held up a small vial I had not seen him retrieve. "Silver chloride, Count. When struck by a gas flame, it blackens. The mirror that turns dark ceases to reflect." Before Valier could move, Holmes hurled the vial into the water below. It burst, sending a cloud of darkness across the rippling surface. The Count recoiled as his image wavered in the murky film. "What have you done? Remove your canvas," Holmes said. "Without a reflective medium, you exist nowhere." Valier staggered backward. "Now there is always reflection." He turned toward the slick tunnel walls, but the moisture there had dulled to an opaque shadow. I stepped forward, revolver drawn. "Yield, sir. The game is finished." His eyes found mine, and for an instant they shone with desperate humanity. "You cannot imagine what it is to dissolve, Doctor, to vanish between sight and self." Holmes's voice softened. "You sought immortality in surfaces, Count, but all surfaces break." The sound motif returned faintly, erratic now, echoing from every direction. 2 taps, then 3, then 1, dissolving into silence. Valier's form seemed to shudder, his outline blurred, melting into the gloom like ink spilled in water. The echo of his final breath whispered through the chamber, "Then let there be darkness." The lantern flickered once and went out. We stood in utter blackness. For a moment, Neither of us spoke. Then I heard Holmes strike a match. The flame flared small and steady, revealing only the empty platform and the darkened water below. The Count was gone, no trace, no sound, only the faint scent of metal. Holmes gazed at the ripples, the final illusion, self-erasure. He has found the only reflection he cannot control. We climbed in silence toward the surface. Dawn light seeped faintly through the sewer grating, pale and diffuse, carrying no reflection at all. Holmes replaced his hat as we emerged into the waking city. "Do you believe he is truly gone?" I asked quietly. Holmes's answer was slow, thoughtful. "Gone as light is gone when eyes close. Yet memory remembers brightness long after darkness returns. Valliere may endure as memory his most human illusion." He turned to me with that slight smile that always signaled the case's close. "Come, Watson, the river carries away both bodies and reflections. London will see itself clearly again for a time." We began walking back toward Baker Street, the sound of our boots soft upon the cobblestones. For once, there was no echo, no rhythm, only the hush of morning. But as we passed a shop window yet to open, the faintest tremor stirred its surface, as though something behind the glass exhaled. Holmes slowed, his expression unreadable. Then, very quietly, came a single, sound, metallic, patient, inevitable. The single tap lingered in the air like the last tick of a dying clock. Holmes and I froze before the shop window, the glass trembling faintly in its frame. Morning had bleached the street of colour, yet the pane shimmered with an inner life, a pulse of silvery motion that was not merely reflection. Holmes leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "One last echo," he murmured. Valliere was too vain to dissolve completely. A trace remains of his after-image upon the glass. "You mean to destroy it?" "In due course," he replied. "But even a ghost obeys its own laws. Watch closely." The surface quivered, and for an instant the Count's profile appeared faint, spectral, lips curved in mockery. Holmes tapped the glass once with his cane. The image rippled and stilled, like disturbed water finding calm. "There," he said quietly. "An interference pattern, no more. He is reduced to vibration alone, no consciousness, only a habit." I exhaled. "Then it truly is over, almost." He gestured to the reflected street. "Observing every object returns its likeness, but none are perfect. That slight imperfection is what keeps reality distinct from illusion." Valliere's error was to seek absolute symmetry. We resumed our walk, the morning growing brighter by degrees. Carts rattled past, their wheels flashing briefly in puddles, and life had returned to its usual disordered rhythm. Yet Holmes's manner remained introspective, almost subdued. At Baker Street, Mrs. Hudson met us with visible relief. "Another of your long nights, Mr. Holmes. The newspapers are already whispering about the fire at the Savoy." "Let them whisper," he said, handing her his coat. The truth, as usual, would bore them. We entered the sitting-room. The metronome still stood upon the mantel, its pendulum crooked from its final struggle. Holmes lifted it gently, straightened the rod, and set it ticking once more. The sound filled the silence, steady now, free of distortion. He smiled faintly. "Order restored. How fragile is the boundary between rhythm and madness, eh, Watson?" I sank into my chair, exhaustion easing into reflection. "And what of Miss Hartley?" "She is safe," Holmes said. "I sent Lestrade to her lodgings before dawn. The mirrors there were all replaced with plain glass, translucent, not reflective. She will find peace in seeing the world as it is, not as it pretends to be." I nodded, watching the gentle sway of the pendulum. "This Valliere, you think he truly believed he'd escaped mortality?" Holmes poured himself coffee, the steam curling like smoke. "He believed he had refined it. He thought reflection eternal because it required no flesh. But what he failed to grasp is that reflection is dependent upon the observer. Remove the eye, and the image ceases to exist. Then his immortality was only as long as someone looked. Precisely. Holmes's tone softened, almost philosophical. To live within another's gaze is to surrender selfhood entirely. The Count's tragedy was not ambition, but dependence. Every performer craves applause, but to survive by it alone is to perish the moment silence falls. The metronome ticked on, unhurried. Outside, a milk cart clattered by. The ordinary sounds of London reclaimed the morning, dissolving the night's eerie tension. Yet I saw something unusual in Holmes's expression, a weariness that was not of the body. "You're troubled," I said quietly. He looked toward the window, where the faint reflection of both of us shimmered in the glass. For an instant down there, Watson, when I saw his image take mine, I wondered whether intellect itself is merely a hall of mirrors. Each deduction reflects another thought, each observation a reflection of reflection. Where then lies the true original? I attempted a smile. In the man who dares to ask such questions, perhaps. Holmes regarded me with something like gratitude, or perhaps in the friend who listens to them. We sat in silence for a moment longer. Then he rose, as if to shake off philosophy like dust. "Come. The morning papers await, and I dare say Lestrade will claim credit before the ink dries." As he crossed to the door, the metronome faltered, its rhythm slipping once, twice, before steadying again. Holmes stopped mid-step. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," I said, a chill rising. He examined the pendulum, frowning, merely imbalance from strain. He adjusted it delicately, and the ticking resumed precise as before, but as he turned away I noticed a subtle change. Our reflections in the window had aligned perfectly. No lag, no lead yet, the faintest shimmer of silver traced their edges like breath upon a mirror. "Holmes," I began. He paused, catching my gaze in the glass. "Yes?" The silver hue faded instantly, leaving only our ordinary likeness. I forced a small laugh. "Nothing, a trick of light." He studied me a moment longer, then smiled. "Quite so. Light has tricks enough for a lifetime." The metronome ticked on patiently, relentlessly. Outside, the sun broke through the fog, filling Baker Street with pale brilliance that caught every surface, every window, every mirrored sign. And for a fleeting instant, as the light shifted, I thought I saw another figure beside us in the glass door, poised and watching still. Then the pendulum clicked once, clean and final, and all was quiet.